When I moved into this house 5 years ago, the very first project I did from this shop was building a work table. In fact, it was a few work tables that all snapped together with magnets, and they're really cool, and they've lasted for a really long time. But part of the reason that I made them rollable general tables was because I didn't know what the shop was gonna be. Well, now the shop has settled, and it's finally time to make something better than these tables to replace them. So today, we're gonna take the best parts of this table, but we're gonna improve it. We're gonna make something stronger, flatter, and with way more features. There's a few things about this table that I actually like and I want to carry over to the new one. One of those is the top. It's a thin piece of replaceable material, so I can drill holes in it and scuff it up, and then I can just take it off and replace it later. So that's awesome. It was also built with really inexpensive materials, top to bottom. It's also very easy to put together, but there's definitely some downsides. Over time, this thing has gotten very flexy. It's not as heavy as it should be, and the biggest problem is that it's not flat. I should not be able to slide a piece of paper underneath this level for that long with a URL on it. The table's not level. So the tabletop is definitely one of the big problems, and we're gonna fix that. But first, we have to build a frame to put it on top of. Let's go to the whiteboard and I'll show you what I'm planning. The plan here is to make the base out of 4x4s for the legs and 2x4s for everything else. I honestly looked at doing oak for this because I wanted to have like a nice sturdy table, and it was twice as much as using pine, which is already very expensive, so we're gonna use pine, which means this entire frame can be made out of 2x4s and 4x4s, and the cuts are gonna be very simple. Most of it's gonna be done at the miter saw, so let's go cut those pieces. To make the legs, all I need to do is cut out a chunk on the top and the bottom on two sides of this. Basically, we're gonna be removing this right here and then this right here so that 2x4s have a little shelf to set on. There's an easy way to do that. You can just take a 2x4, push it up against the outside, and then mark it, but unfortunately, because of the little curve on the edge of the 2x4, it's not gonna be super exact, and we want it to be. So instead, I'm just gonna use a combination square, set to the right depth, and we'll just mark the sides that we need to, and cut them off on the bandsaw. So I'm gonna run these through the bandsaw and just basically cut off the section that would represent where the 2x4 is gonna go. But if you don't have a bandsaw, you can certainly do this with a circular saw. You just wanna run across this section a bunch of times to take away as much material as possible, and you can knock those little pieces out and then take a chisel to flatten it. Either one totally works, this is just way faster. Now that we've got the legs cut and all the 2x4s cut, we can build the frame. And this is a very simple construction. We're gonna use the concrete floor because even though it's not perfectly level and flat, it's better than the table. Just know that your garage is probably not flat either, but luckily that doesn't really matter when building the frame. So we're gonna get the frame put together, then we'll use some shims to get it as level as we can within the space, and then we'll build the tabletop on top of that. Every corner of this frame is gonna be made the same way because we made the legs this way. Basically, we're gonna lay down a 2x4, we're gonna put a whole bunch of glue right there and then a whole bunch of glue right here, put these pieces together and then drive in some big screws this direction and then this direction and do the same thing on every corner, and we're gonna have a frame. The frame is done. I did add a couple of these upright pieces in the middle, just evenly distributed between the sides. These are basically just gonna give us a place to put drawer slides later on so we can have some big, deep drawers. But next up, it's time to move the old table out of the way so we can start working on the top. Now it's time to make the top for this table, and I said earlier that I wanted this thing to be as flat as possible. Well, the best way to do that is to build a torsion box. And this is essentially two plates with a structure in between those plates, and that structure pulls tension in all directions. It's very easy to make, and it's also really lightweight, lighter than just stacking up a whole bunch of 2x4s and then planing them down flat. So the way we're gonna do this is take a piece of MDF, and then we're gonna build a 1x4 structure that's basically just like an offset grid. And we're gonna glue and nail all those pieces together. Then we're gonna glue them down to the bottom panel and then glue another top panel on top of that. And with all of those pieces glued and brad nailed together, they're gonna be putting tension in all the different directions, creating torsion and keeping the top in place. It's pretty easy, but I've never done it, so let's give it a shot. I've got a 1/2 inch sheet of MDF here. I'm gonna use that for the top and the bottom because the structure inside is gonna stop that from sagging, hopefully. Basically, I just need to cut this sheet down to size. It's all right if you leave it a little bit big because you can always trim it off with a router. I'm gonna cut this down on the table saw and lay it on my frame and work there. I started to make the frame on the outside of this, and one of the 1x4s that I have has a big twist in it, which is not gonna work for this. And so instead, for that one piece, I'm gonna use a piece of plywood. It doesn't really matter what material you put in here. It's really about having the pieces flat and straight and really tied together. Also, the strength and the flatness is gonna come from how thick that box is. The more you have in all 3 dimensions, the more rigid the box is gonna be. So if you try to make a really short table, you're losing a little bit of that. I'm kinda going with a 4-inch tabletop, and we'll see how that goes. But some people have tabletops that are really, really big, and they are dead flat. I went ahead and put the frame together, the outside frame, and so next up I just have to fill out the inside. But I wanted to point something out. I'm adding glue and brad nails to the frame to tie it to itself, but not to the bottom yet. I want to make sure that no glue holds this frame down until I've got the entire thing put together. Basically, you want to make the interior structure, let that glue dry, and once that's rigid, then you glue all of those faces, stick it down, glue the top side, and stick on another sheet, and then you just brad nail that entire thing together to make one big block. Some people actually put wax paper on the bottom surface to make sure that it doesn't get glued down yet. I'm just gonna be careful. The frame is done. Didn't take very long at all. And it's pretty strong so far, but it still needs the skin on the top and the bottom. So with it laid down like this, I'm gonna add glue to all of these faces and then lay a sheet on top of it, go back and drive in a whole bunch of brad nails, like probably more than I need, into all these surfaces to tie it together. Once we're done with that, just flip it over and do the same thing with the other side and the box will be done. This video is sponsored by SimpliSafe, which is fantastic because we're big fans of SimpliSafe around here. I've got a system at home and at the office. It's a great way to secure your home and the things and the people that you love. It's really simple too. All you gotta do is go to the website, simplisafe.com/ILTMS. You build out the system that you need for your home piece by piece, and then it shows up at your house in a box. You don't even have to wait on anybody to come set it up for you. You can do it yourself, and it only takes about 30 minutes. In that box, you're gonna be able to pick cameras, indoor and outdoor. You got water sensors, smoke detectors, all sorts of glass break sensors and other stuff to make sure that you've got every part of your home covered. Once your system is all set up, be sure to sign up for their 24/7 home monitoring protection service. This is basically a way for them to keep an eye on your home, and if any of the sensors are tripped when the system is armed, they will be able to quickly dispatch any of the help that you need. And that service is less than $1 a day, so it's absolutely worth it. And right now, you can get their best deal of the year. This is like a legitimately good deal. It's 40% off your entire system. Go to simplisafe.com/ILTMS, build out the system you want, and have it sent directly to you. Remember, there's no safe like SimpliSafe, and big thanks to SimpliSafe for sponsoring this video. Oh, look at that. Oh, dang. That was easy enough. Now we've got a nice replaceable top. It looks really good. It's easy to replace eventually when I tear it up. And you could leave it like this, but I'm also gonna add a hardwood border, just probably a 1x4 of maple or something like that, around the outside just to have a hard, sharp edge. And even that can be replaced if it needs to be. It's not gonna be structural to the box, just gonna be on the outside. But first, I need to go take a shower. Now that we've got the tabletop and the frame all done, we need to stick them together. And I want to make sure that they're actually tied together all the way around so that as we lift and roll the table around, the whole thing doesn't flex. I want it to lock together into a single piece to help keep the top level. So to do that, we're going to add some pocket holes to the frame so that we can drive in several screws all the way around the perimeter up into the top. So I'm just going to use this portable pocket hole jig to drill a bunch of holes. Now that this thing is locked together, we're gonna put some casters on it so that we can move it around and get it into its position. I've used these casters a whole bunch of times. They are really, really cool because they allow here, just let me show you. Over here, on these other cases that I've made, we have these casters and they will let it roll really easily, but then you can lift up on this and the whole thing drops down and lands on the ground. So the actual piece is sitting firmly on the ground, and when you wanna move it, you step on these, it lifts it up and it can easily roll. I've got them on this thing, I've got them on this cart, and that cart back there. They're fantastic. For the side of this, I got some awesome wall control from our friends over at Wall Control. And we're gonna be mounting a couple of pieces of this on each end so that we can hang some tools and stuff. And to do that, I need a center divider here, a place to drive in some screws. So we're just gonna take another 2x4 with some pocket holes and mount it in between these two pieces. Obviously, if you weren't adding the wall control, you wouldn't necessarily need this piece here, but we are, so we're gonna add it. Making some drawers, and if you've never seen us make them before, they're very simple butt joints and pocket hole screws. The only difference about these is that we put a 1/2-inch MDF bottom in, so they can hold a lot of weight, and these 36-inch drawer slides that we're using can hold 250 pounds a piece, so we can really load these things up. I got 2 more to make, then we'll put on some drawer faces, and then we can finally load it up with tools. Whoa, boy. So this new Workbench is way better than the old one. It looks better, it's flatter, it's heavier, it's stronger, it's got tons more storage, and I just really like it. You can make one just like this because we're gonna have some plans for it over on the website. Bob from the future here. We are gonna have plans for this table if you wanna make your own, and we've been working on a cool way for you to visualize a full-scale 3D model in your space. So if you take a picture of this QR code or hit the link down in the description, you're gonna get an augmented reality view of your space where you can put the table in place and move it around and spin it and all that stuff. And if you like it, you can buy the plans. Okay, back to you, Bob. But before you go get those plans, it's time for bloopers. Thanks for watching. Bob, you big dummy, we're gonna go the other direction a 1/2 inch. The way that you go about that is by building a torsion box. Basically, to get the top level, and then we'll build the top on top of the top.